start with a simple little Buddhist chant in Tibetan because I'm trained in the Tibetan tradition. Sangye Jodan Soki Shonam La, Jabadani, Kyabsuchi, Dangi Junso Jepa Sonam Gi, Drola Pencha, Sangye, Trupar Shaw. By practicing the 6 paramitas, may I quickly become a Buddha to be of greatest possible benefit to all beings. I think one of the early teachings I received on death and dying, how to deal with death and dying with oneself, and how to deal with death and dying of a loved one in one's close environment, came in Dharamshala from a Lama appointed by the Dalai Lama to teach to Western people. And he started the teaching by saying that meditation or awareness of death and dying was Buddha's first teaching, because when he taught the 4 truths, the 4 reality factors, the 4 noble truths or 4 reality factors as understood by the Aryas, the higher beings or the mystical beings, the 4 noble truths as suffering, the cause of suffering, liberation or transcendence, and the path to transcendence. And part of suffering or dukkha, sort of difficulties, I don't know, suffering is going to be a harsh word in English, but it's usually translated like that. Anxiety, stress, difficulties, challenges, unpleasantries, etc. Part of that is old age and dying. But as the great 7th Dalai Lama pointed out in a mystical poem or mystical song he wrote in about 1750 or so, for ordinary beings, death is a little bit scary. But for an advanced meditator, one simply at the time of death observes the natural dying process. And when the clear light of the moment before death arises, one throws one's arms around it like greeting one's dear old mom after being away from home for a number of years. So in that way, the death and dying and old age, aging, death and dying are difficult for untrained people, but for trained beings, they're just a natural flow of the river going all the way from the mountain into the ocean. Similarly, death and dying was Buddha's last teaching, in that 3 months before he passed away, he sent out messages to all of his main patrons and students in the 8 main kingdoms where he had taught throughout the 45 years of his teaching career. May we call it a career in enlightened beings' activities? What's your career? Well, Buddha activity. I'm a specialist in Buddha activity because I became a Buddha. Anyway, the Buddha Karika, as it's known, Karika. So it's his 3 months before passing, he announced that he would be passing, and anyone who wanted to join him and meditate with him on the night of his passing should meet him in Kushinagar. And that was one of the 8 places he had visited regularly on his annual walk and talk, walking and teaching annual circuit, you could say. And they all met him there, and as it came time for him to pass away, he simply passed away. He simply sat up and said to his students that, remember, you are your own savior or you are your own condemner. Take responsibility for your life and your enlightenment, and you will be your own savior. And if you don't take that responsibility, you become your own condemner. And having said that, he lay down in the lion posture upon the funeral pyre, the place where he had decided to pass, and then was cremated. Of course, we Buddhists like to exaggerate a little bit, or as the Mongolians put it, add a little salt to every story. Then the cremation would spontaneously burst into flame. And it's not impossible. Spontaneous combustion is there as a possibility. Otherwise, it might be salt added to the story to make it more dramatic and beautiful. So Buddha's first teaching and last teaching. Now, the present Dalai Lama very often says that if you want to contribute to world peace, the best thing you can do is cultivate the peaceful mind yourself. That peace begins with the individual and spreads from one individual to the individual's family and friends and connections and everyone that individual touches during their life. But of course, we cannot immediately become a man or a woman who is completely peaceful. We will still have some clashes, some angers and irritations and preferences. I like this politician, I don't like that politician. I like this philosopher, I don't like that philosopher, and so on. So we can try to be peaceful from the time we make a determination that the way of peace is our best option in general. We have to say in general, our best option. And we won't always feel peaceful, but we can try to be peaceful. We can practice the way of peace. It's the same with death and dying, isn't it? Therefore, Karma Lingpa, who wrote the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or the Tibetan Book of Liberation, by hearing in the bardo, who revealed it, we could say, as a Tibetan who revealed it, writes that if you are dying, the best helper you can have, the best assistant, is a Vajra twin. In other words, someone who has received the same initiation from the same master at the same time and has continued that tantric practice. In other words, a kind of a very close Vajra brother-sister, connected to the same Lama, you could say, the same lineage of practice. The next best is just someone connected to the same lineage of practice. And beyond that, it's anyone who is highly accomplished. For that reason, in that first teaching on death, dying, and so on, someone mentioned the Tibetan Book of the Dead to the Lama and said, what do you think if back home our dear old aunt or grandpa is passing away? Should we chant the Tibetan Book of the Dead near their bedside? And the Lama said, most probably not. It's a little bit scary. And in fact, as all of you know, the Tibetan Book of the Dead is especially written for practitioners of the Shitro Kilkor, the mandala of 100 peaceful and wrathful deities. So it's only generally read in Tibet near the bedsides of those who have done that specific mandala practice during their lifetime. And so it kind of reminds them of the daily practice they did, of the mandala practice they did every day of their life, and so on. And so the Lama went on to say, if that person is a Christian and they are kind of an enthusiastic Christian, I guess we'd say a practicing Christian, then it's better to just simply read little wise sayings from Christ or from the Bible, their favorite kind of passages. The most important is to make the person feel relaxed and confident and clear during their passing. So those two issues came up, first and last teachings of Buddha, and the other being, the more connected the person is with you, the more beneficial it can be. Sometimes this also goes to sort of karmic connection, like if it's your mom or dad passing, even though, you know, your dad may be a serial bank robber and your mom, I don't know, some sort of wild profession. Nonetheless, when they're passing away, your karmic connection with them will help them feel calm, clear, and confident. So the Lama went on to say, brothers and sisters sitting by the bedsides of brothers and sisters, if they have a loving relationship, an intimate relationship, a close relationship, next to having someone who's your spiritual twin or your spiritual, at least, sibling, then someone very karmically closely connected to bring that calmness and clarity to the person. Now, something mentioned there and referred to by the seventh Dalai Lama's poem, for the untrained person, death can be a little scary and intimidating because we're stepping into the unknown. But for the advanced tantric yogi or yogini, it's like coming home from a long journey and seeing your dear old mom in the doorway and throwing your arms around her. You throw your arms around the clear light and merge into the ocean of the after-death moment. So I would say that from that side, I wanted to discuss Buddhist attitudes towards death and dying. Firstly, from the point of view of oneself, following the Dalai Lama's instruction. If you want to be a man or woman of peace, first cultivate the peaceful mind within yourself. And until you get it, then at least try to cultivate it or practice it as best you can. The same here during our daily life, to practice awareness of the death and dying process. And I think here especially important are the highest yoga tantra teaching on the dissolution, what's known as the dissolution of the 25 constituents. Every highest yoga tantra explores this. If you practice highest yoga tantra, many highest yoga tantra yogis, yoginis will do their sadhana 4 times a day. Tunchi Naljor is known in Tibetan, the four yoga in 4 sessions. And the yoga in 4 sessions usually as a kirim, as a generation stage or a mandala practice, begins with taking Dharmakaya as the path, or bringing Dharmakaya mind into the path. So there you simply say the mantra Om Sabova Shodo Sabadam Sabova Shodo Hum, and sometimes you'll like to add the extra mana Atmakonya Hum. I won't say that complete second mantra because it's very secret, very, very secret. And then you imagine or visualize that the whole external world, the supporting mandala, as it's known in Tibetan, Tempe Kilkor, dissolves into the supported mandala, Tempe, the Tempe Kilkor. The supporting mandala, in other words, the environment of mandala as environment, dissolves into the mandala. So it's a peaceful and 100 peaceful and wrathful deities. The mandala, environmental mandala, supporting mandala, would dissolve into the 100 peaceful, wrathful divinities. And then they would dissolve into the main divinity, you yourself at the head of the mandala, you seeing yourself as your yidam, your supreme Buddha form, you could say, supreme Buddha mind. Then that would dissolve into the, from head down and feet up into the hung at your heart, syllable hung. The ship crew under the hung into the ha into the head of the ha into the crescent moon, that into the little sun, which represents the syllable and that into the nada. And this is known as taking the clear light, taking death as clear light dharmakaya, bringing clear light of the moment before death, or the clear light of death, as it's known in Tibetan, but as the great Chogyam Trungpa first put it in Western parlance, we shouldn't call it the clear light of death. We should call it the clear light of the moment before death. But in Tibetan, that's just known as Chika Usel, moment of death, clear light. Now, this is, why is this called taking the clear light of moment of death as dharmakaya? Because according to Buddhist understanding of the death process, when we die, as we start to pass away, our subtle energies dissolve. So this has to do with what we call the 3 levels of a human physicality: our cause body of flesh and blood, inside the coarse body of flesh and blood, our energy system, our immunology system, as we call it in the West, but mainly driven and supported by the lung, by the energies, or the winds, as they're known in Tibetan. And on the most subtle, clear light mind, and memories and karmic instincts that support, that are like the horse on which the rider of clear light mind is supported. So the idea is that at the time of our death, first the energies on the inner psychoneuroimmunology body, the energies supporting the sort of coarse level of our physicality begin to fade. Our arms become very heavy and our legs become very heavy, and there's these sort of outer and inner signs. And then the energies, so these are known as the earth elements, salung in Tibetan. And then the water energies, the chulung, which are on the coarse body, are our blood and our lymph and our fluids and all the fluid elements of the body. And when they start to dissolve, the heartbeat starts slowing down. And then the fire energies, when that happens, the body begins to cool. Karma Lingpa in Tibetan Book of the Dead sort of talks about if it cools this way or if it cools this way. The manner of the cooling kind of indicates the direction of reincarnation. Just like if you hold an arrow and point it, you can sort of mathematically have some sense of where that arrow is going to go. So if it's a bad sign, you should quickly like bring in the cavalry. That sort of thing. And there the air energies dissolve, and As we're dying, then the breath becomes subtler and subtler and subtler. And they speak about outer inner secret signs like this, and those are the outer ones. And when we do it as taking death as Dharmakaya, the supporting mandala dissolving into, well, I'm just using Karma Lingpa's illustration there of the 100 peaceful, restful mandalas. If you do chakra samvara practice, for instance, with 5 deity chakra samvara from Gantapada, or 32 deity or 37 deity, there's many different mandalas of chakra samvara, or Guhya Samaja, or Vajrakilya, whatever. But let's stick with Karma Lingpa's 100 because he liked them. In fact, he wrote several books about them, not just a Tibetan book, as I said. When the supporting mandala dissolves into the deity, this is like the earth element dissolving at the time of death into the water element. And when all those deities dissolve into the central, this becomes like the dissolution of the energies supporting the fluid movements of the body. In other words, heartbeat and everything that it brings about. And when that dissolves into the letter Hung, that's like the fire, water into fire, the dissolution of the fire elements. The energy supporting the heating and metabolism system of the body, you could say. And when that dissolves into wind, and shift you into Ha, into the head of the Ha. And sometimes different systems even take it up to the sun and the moon, but let's just take it up to the head of the Ha in the syllable Hung. And thus air into mind. And so that's the dissolution of at the time of death. Then with dissolving into mind, it's like, goodbye, cruel world. Air into mind is the way it's said in Tibetan literature. And often the way it's put in tantric literature, then when the little moon crescent dissolves, this is like those genetic forces you inherited from your male ancestors, and which give you the 40 winds supporting aggression, like, Batman, kapow, kabam, that sort of stuff. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you've still got those 40 aggressive energies. And so when that dissolves into the sun in the Hung process of the taking Dharmakaya, clear light of the moment of death is Dharmakaya, as a prelude in the sadhana, as a practice in the sadhana. Then at the time of death, it's said the white drop, the drop of sperm inherited from your male ancestors, leaves its site in the middle of the crown, middle of the brain chakra, descends to the heart, and you have a flash of moonlight like light, like on a clear autumn moon, when the moonlight seems almost like streaming milk or something like that. And then the 33 winds supporting the 33 conceptual inherited from your female ancestors that support the female quality of passion dissolve, and the red drop moves from the navel chakra to the heart chakra. And there's an inner sign like a red sunset or something like that. Not if you're in LA or Oakland, where it's probably all purpley from some pollution and smoke, but if you're in a mountainside in the Himalayas, looking down over India prior to the Industrial Revolution. Or maybe LA in 1842, when that boating fellow from Boston, who had bad eyes, and was told the only cure is don't read for 3 years. So he took a boat ride to LA and back. And at that time in LA, only 4 Europeans living there. So not much pollution. So that kind of a sunset. And then the white and red collapsed together at the heart. And the 7 winds or energies supporting a conceptual mind of an independent self or duality, or you could say the 7 principal mental malfunctions, mental perceptual distortions, perhaps you could call them something like that. In Tibetan, these are called Namtak Gyechyo, the 80 conceptual mindsets. And basically, Namtok in Tibetan means like seeing a piece. Nam is like a little piece, and Tok is seeing it. So rather than see the big picture in our perception, we always get a picture of this, that, or that. The other, always seen from the perspective of duality. The perceiver and the perceived are separate entities. And that separateness, that sense of separateness distorts it. And it becomes like looking through a little window at a big picture. It's hard to tell what that big picture is. Something like that. And then we have an experience of radiant darkness, not like black darkness, but like raven's wings, raven's wings blackness, kind of a radiant blackness, you could say. And then we emerge from that into primordial mind, original mind, clear light mind, also known as Magi Usel in Tibetan, mother clear light mind. Known as mother, because just like mother gives rise to all human children, regardless of the occasional national enquirer that's sold in supermarkets that says man in Idaho just found with baby living in his lung. And if that is true, I never checked out that particular National Enquirer posting if it was true or not. But even if it were true, he is a surrogate mother, you could say, for that child. So it's called Mother Clear Light Mind because it is the basis of all experience, from bugs to Buddhas, and has the same quality in a bug as it has in a Buddha. There's no difference between a Buddha's clear light mind and your clear light mind, or your dog's clear light mind, or if you have goldfish, your goldfish's clear light mind. Now, what's very interesting here, so then when we do this as a generation stage practice or as a mandala practice, then we sort of imagine that our whole sense of self and other dissolves into the vast radiance of being. And this is made as a parallel to the dying process. Now, and then of course we come out of that eventually, the clear light of moment of death. And as you know, high meditators, high lamas, when they die, hold to that clear light moment when it arises, and hold to what is a state known in Tibetan as tukdam. And for instance, the great Nyingma Lama Chatal Rinpoche, when he died in Harping, Nepal, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, sat like that and took tukdam for several weeks. And one of my own gurus, Kapiling Doshichang, who was the Dalai Lama's main Lama when he died, similarly remained in tukdam for about 3 weeks. Usually the amount of time they hold to the clear light if you're an enlightened being, isn't a lot to do with the master himself, but to give the disciples, the trainees, the dulja. I prefer the word trainees to disciple. And the Tibetan word is either loma, which means student, or dulja, trainee. There's no word in Tibetan for disciples. That has the same meaning as the English, but you can always parallel almost anything. So I think, I've studied with about 35 teachers during my 50 plus years of Buddhist training, and from many, many different schools of Tibetan Buddhism. And all of them, without exception, manifested Tukdam at the time of death. Now, when we do it as meditation, we hold to that clear light, as long as our samadhi permits and the time for completing our samadhi allows. You got to be back at work, or you've got some other something on your schedule in the morning and you have to do some things, or you're a doctor and you get a beep, 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 quick, stop meditating on the toilet, doing your sadhana on the toilet, because it's the only time as a doctor you can do practice. Someone's just had a heart attack. Come quick, quick. So you stay in clear light as long as possible, and you come out and you come into come out as Sambhogakaya Buddha. Just like at the time of after enlightenment, we first achieved Dharmakaya, and we manifest from Dharmakaya to Sambhogakaya. It's sort of an enlightenment form. We come out of formless enlightenment to enlightenment form. Sambhogakaya is often said to be only perceivable by Aryas. In other words, by great saints and mystics. And then from there, manifest as the full mandala of 100 peaceful and wrathful deities, ourself at the center as Nirmanakaya emanations. In other words, emanating in the ordinary world, everywhere from the hells and ghosts and animal realms and the varieties of humans who are hells, ghosts, and animal-like. Some a little bit human. And the Asuras and the Deva realms and so on and so forth. We manifest in that way. So 4 times, Dalai Lama says, I rehearse my death 4 times a day. Means he's really referring to doing that Kusam Lamkar practice 4 times a day as he does his main Yidam practice or mandala practice. Generation stage goes like that. Now, when we go to sleep at night, when we do again a generation stage yoga, we look at the parallel between going to sleep and dying. And this becomes even more important in completion stage yoga, in second stage yoga or highest stage yoga, you could say. When we do the chakra, nadi, Tibetan chandali or kundalini practice, often known as tumo. And the 6 yogas of Naropa system, or 6 yogas of Niguma, we put tumo as the first of the 6, meaning a completion stage. So all highest yoga tantra has tumo as the basis of its practice, without exception, without exception. And then the other the next 2 in the 6 yoga systems are illusory body, illusory physicality, and clear light mind. It's the illusory physicality and clear light mind which become the main method for achieving enlightenment. And the other 3 of those, let's stick to the Niguma system, dream yoga, bardo yoga, and poa. How to practice when we go to sleep at night, how to practice clear light of sleep. And so we could say clear light of the moment of sleep yoga, and then practice dream yoga. So again, this becomes important because it's often said going to sleep is like dying. If you know how to go to sleep well, you can die well. if you can practice clear light of moment of sleep, and if you can practice dream yoga, then you can successfully practice tukdam at the time of death, and you can practice bardo yoga, or in other words, you can do what the Bardo Tudal is all about, the Tibetan Book of the Dead is all about, which is achieving enlightenment in the bardo. So this is made very clear by Karma Lingpa in his own introductory section to Tibetan Book of the Dead, where he says, you know, it's nice to have this read by someone who's your twin, or at least your Vajra sibling, if not someone who's done the same practice. In other words, in his case, 100 peaceful and wrathful deities. If you're a Vajrakiliya person, it's someone who has been doing Vajrakiliya. If you're doing Chakrasambhara, someone who's a Chakrasambhara or Vajrayogini or whatever is the highest yoga practice. And now, when we practice it as generation stage yoga, it's called generation because generation here means using a kind of a creative imagination to sort of auto-suggest an experience. It's sort of like hyping yourself up when you go out on a first date and you're a young guy, you know you're not as handsome as that beautiful lady you're dating deserves. You know all of your own flaws and weaknesses, and you're hoping she doesn't notice any of them. So you hype yourself up. So generation stage yoga, I like to call hyping yourself up. Well, I've never called it that before, but on this instant, I like to call it hyping yourself up, the stage of yoga. And then as you go to sleep, you do this dissolution of the elements just like at the time of death. So the supporting mandalas into the supported into the deities, them into you as the main deity, you into the hung at your heart, the Shebkyu into the ha, into the head of the ha, that into the crescent moon, that into the sun, and that into the nada, into clear light of the moment before sleep. And you like to try to hold that clear moment of the moment before sleep. And you make a strong auto-suggestion or hyping yourself up for your first date on your dream yoga experience. When dreams arise, I'm going to notice it's a dream, and I'm going to transform my dream environment into my tantric practice. I was just reading a fifth Dalai Lama commentary by fifth Dalai Lama to the Sakya school practice of Vajrayogini. He says, if you do the sadhana very well and you do the sleep dream yoga practice very well, then when you go to sleep, you will immediately see yourself as Vajrayogini in the dream environment, as Vajrayogini mandala. And if you do this, then when you engage in completion stage yogas, you will very easily accomplish this blending of sun and moon, in other words, of daytime practice and nighttime practice. And at the time of death, well, even if you have not achieved enlightenment, will be able to, after the clear light of the moment of death arises and you leave that clear light, you will automatically have a sense of yourself as Vajrayogini, and will immediately transform into the perfect transition, either to Akanista or as to reincarnation as a Rigden. And if we look at Karma Lingpa's Tibetan Book of the Dead, it goes on through the various stages of bardo. You know, as you go through the first 7, and then 7, and then 7, and then 7. These 7, of course, they're not human days. We have to put them somehow, right? And so that's how we do that for convenience. It's really 7 states of consciousness. And each of those gets repeated until starting on the highest, most subtle level of the peaceful deities. And the next is, and so you could say that's when our feminine wise side closest to clear light comes out. So everything is peaceful deities in the first 7 days. The next 7 is the wrathful deities, our male side. So we're sort of coming down a notch into the illusory, aggressive male side, and everything looks roar, roar, rip, rip, roar, wrathful, rumble, tumble, that sort of sounds in the background. And Karma Lingpa puts it in very beautiful language. And we come down each stage and each stage. And in Karma Lingpa's text, he mentions, now, be careful not to take rebirth. Because the aim here is to achieve enlightenment in the rebirth, in the bardo, right? So before, in his introduction section, he says, if you're adept or mature in the tantric yogas, then you should try to achieve enlightenment in the bardo. If you're not, then practice POA, practice the POA method of direct transfer with it, bypassing the bardo. It's like if you're not sure you could beat Mike Tyson in a boxing match, stay out of the ring. Walk directly past that ring to the exit door. Of course, these days he's in his 60s, so those of you who are in your 20s or 30s, you'd have a chance against him. At his peak, probably not. So Karma Lingpa puts it like that. But when we do the practice as generation stage and as dream later in completion stage as dream yoga, we're doing it as though we are adept. In other words, we're doing it, we're not bypassing dream yoga because dream body is like bardo body, but we're exploring it and trying to get competence, you could say, of working on that subtle level of consciousness. And in Karma Lingpa's, then it goes down, 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 it gets worse, 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 worse until you're on the 7th level. And so that's getting close to the 49 days. And then, okay, you haven't gotten enlightenment, you're going to get kicked out of the bardo, bounced from the bardo. May I use that expression? Bounced from the bardo. So you try to get bounced in your preferential method of being bounced. And here Karma Lingpa mentions 2 options. One is to take rebirth as a chakravartin. In other words, a great secular leader. Chakravartin is literally mean, often we translate it as a universal emperor. And the other is as a rigden. And rigden means tantric master or tantric. Rig means like knowledge, but meaning tantric knowledge, and den, possessor of great tantric quality. In other words, you want to fulfill the bodhisattva vow to bring great benefit to all living beings. And in fulfilling that vow, you can go one of 2 directions. One is in a secular way, you could become, say, next president of the US of A, and, declare that you're no longer going to give 3/4 of the budget to the military, and you're going to basically have naked peaceniks leading the military. Not necessarily naked. It's part of the country is too cold for that. And you'll solve all of the environmental problems by everyone has to grow their own food in their backyard. No more shipping food halfway around the planet. So like that, you could be bodhisattva in a secular way. By straightening out, you could say, the social and political and economic structures of our planet. Or you could become reborn as a rigden, a tantric master, someone who becomes a great spiritual leader, spiritual teacher, and who brings benefit to many people in a kind of meditative way, rather than in a. And I think this comes down to the, often when we say political and spiritual in English, there are 2 very different realms. But as Dalai Lama, once I discussed this with him, he said, for us, politics means how you take care of the body and the physical world you're in. Everyone has a body and everyone is in a physical world. So it's very important that we do that in an efficient way. Spiritual is referring how to take care of your mind. And so how you basically become your mind becomes more infused with what we could call enlightenment qualities. Tibetans usually, in Buddhism, they call them bodhisattva qualities, like compassion, wisdom, power here in the sense of competence, something like that. So taking rebirth as one of those two, and sometimes we can do it as both, right? It's said when the second Dalai Lama, after he passed away, there was quite a bit of sectarian fighting going on in Tibet. I think largely created by the divisive divide and rule policies introduced by the Ming dynasty in China, where he gave, black and red and various hats to various lamas, kind of like he was endorsing them in some way. And then that became a kind of a way of, if you're endorsed by the Emperor of China, this is your sect will be patronized by the Emperor of China. And almost everyone got some hat or another. And so that, for instance, one of Tsongkhapa's disciples, Tsongkhapa was invited to go to China, but said no, he didn't want to catch TB or smallpox. So he said, but he sent one of his students who divination said wouldn't get TB or smallpox. So he got a black hat, the same as Karmapa's black hat, exactly the same. So the emperor gave half a dozen of those out and half a dozen red hats and like that. So then this sort of led to the Ming emperor trying to, you could say, manipulate Tibetan schools to get greater power himself in Tibet. So then the second Dalai Lama passed away and he thought, this is a little irritating. And I don't think I'll be reborn in Tibet. Then Padmasambhava appeared to him and in the bardo and said, well, if you don't manifest Nirmanakaya in Tibet, that'll be a problem for Tibet because this is going to continue and you'll be able to bring about an end to it, to the Ming Emperor's manipulative activities. And what I'll do is if you do accept to come back, then 100 years from now, so he passed away in 1542, 100 years from now, you will become both Chakravartin and Rigden. You will become a combined Chakravartin and Rigden. And 100 years later, of course, the fifth Dalai Lama became spiritual and temporal leader of Central Asia. In effect, both Chakravartin and Rigden, you could say a sort of fulfillment of Karma Lingpa's sense of the way things should go, bring together worldly and spiritual. And so he called his government Ganden Sishi Sungchao, the joyful union of secular and spiritual, or temporal and spiritual. And as of those of you who have Nyingma background know, he is often put up as the head of the Jangtir lineage, one of the most important Nyingma lineages in his time. I translated Dilgo Khenze's Rime Lama Chopa, Rime Guru Yoga and Lama Chopa Guru Puja some years ago for the Rime Ling Center in Chicago. And Dilgo Khenze had written at the request of Truksey Rinpoche, who used to live. His monastery used to be on the northern face of Mount Everest, the highest altitude monastery in the world. And when Chinese invaded, he moved around to the south face of Everest. Troshik Rinpoche, written at the request of Troshik Rinpoche. Anyway, it's based on the great Rimé master, the first Khyentse Wangpo, the first Khyentse Wangpo, great Rimé master. And in it, he writes, if you don't want to put Khyentse Wangpo there for the Guru Yoga, you can put the fifth Dalai Lama, because he was a great Rimé master, bringing together all of the different lineages as one lineage. So he becomes both a Chakravartin and a Rigden. Then if we look, so when we practice, then when we go to sleep at night, practicing generation stage yoga in that Karma Lingpa tradition of the 100 peaceful, wrathful deities, and we come out of clear light at the moment of death, we come into the dream, we immediately transform our dream, ourself, our dream body, into our main yidam, the main of the 100 peaceful and wrathfuls, and with the dream environment as the mandala, and our buddies, our pals, our dream pals, as the other 98 peaceful, 99 peaceful, wrathful deities. And then when we wake up in the morning, we wake up as though we come out. And so we go and we generate that as a dream mandala, and we take it and dissolve it back into clear light. And then, of course, we lose the clear light and dreams appear. And again, we make into the mandala, and then we make into clear light. We do that all during the day. Then when we wake up in the morning, it's as though we're arising from clear light as the main dude or gal in the peaceful and wrathful mandala. So generation stage goes like that. Now, completion stage, Sogrim in Tibetan, sometimes translated as perfection stage, means we do it on the basis of Tummo. And so we do kind of the same thing, except by energy and not just visualization. In other words, we do forceful Tummo practice, and we bring all of the energies into the central channel. The energy is powering the five senses, and therefore powering the coarse body, you could say. And this becomes the Vajra body, or the subtle body. We call it Vajra body, or we can call it subtle body. And again, when the earth element energy supporting the earth element goes in, then the water element goes in, and we have similar kind of experience to going to sleep or to going into deep meditation, where we lose the ability to move limbs, and we basically centralize our whole awareness. And it's in Kalachakra Tantra, it's called the sensory withdrawal yoga, because you withdraw the energy supporting eye consciousness or visual consciousness and audio consciousness, smell consciousness. And one of you was recovering from COVID, so means the yoga of withdrawing that energy was very easy during COVID. Because the sense of smell disappears quite a bit and sense of taste disappears. Those energies withdraw quite easily. And then if we can take it further with Lungpa Chen, the Ba's breathing, and then Dorje Depas, known in Tibetan Vajra recitation, we can bring the white drop down to the heart, inducing dissolving the 40 conceptual energy, 40 male energies supporting conceptual consciousness of energy, of aggression, and we can bring the red drop up yogically to the heart, withdrawing or sedating, perhaps we could say, but withdrawing timba. The Tibetan word timba is like dissolving, like a cloud timpas into the sky, sort of like that. It dissolves into the sky. And those 33 energies, female energies of passion, are no longer supported. And then the two white and red drops collapse at the heart. with our sense of self, like a little blue bar or a hung, sometimes seen as a hung at the center. And the 7 energy supporting a distorted state of consciousness with characterized by duality, you could say. And we experience that sort of great radiant darkness. And if we can hold there, then it releases and we experience clear light of mind, just like at the moment of going to sleep, just like at the moment of death. Often it's added, just like at the moment of sexual orgasm, and just like at the moment of a peak of a sneeze. And we hold that. And as you know, the Dalai Lama many years ago with Herb Benson out of Harvard was asked to test some of these yogis on both body heat manifestations and breath retention. And Dalai Lama managed to convince some of them in the name of science to fly to Harvard and stand naked in front of 100 students with various thermometers and whatnot popped up into every orifice from anus to penis to ears and nose, and while they did their tumo in the name of science. Science is interesting, but not always pretty. So sometimes this is called the death simulation process. So like when Dalai Lama says, in order to contribute to world peace, we should first become peaceful ourselves. Of course, becoming a complete nirvana person, achieving nirvana ourselves would be nice. But even before that, we can try to be peaceful and meet every situation in a reason. Well, peace here really in Buddhism really means like a mind with inner clarity and lacking anger. So actually, when we talk about compassion in Tantra, we have the 4 faces of compassion: peace, increase, power, and violence. So violence is not necessarily not peaceful. It's only non-peaceful if the mind is not driven by compassion and relaxed, clear wisdom. And of course, people always say the question, how do you know it really is that, or if people are just saying, I punched you in the nose out of relaxed, clear wisdom and compassion? Nobody can really say for sure, right? Therefore, like it's said in the Lojong teachings of the great Kadampa masters, you are your own best witness. There is no jury or judge. You can't like go to the Dalai Lama or a Dilgo Khyentse or a Dudjom Rinpoche and say, I punched that guy in the nose. Was that good? You are your own best witness. So then when we take it to this kind of practice during the day, when we do it as a nighttime practice, we do the same energy withdrawal, the same tumo practice, and we try to invoke very consciously the clear light of the moment before sleep and to retain it yogically. So this, in the 6 yogas of Naropa, 6 yogas of Niguma, is often said illusory body and clear light are the actual enlightenment, the main body of the practice for enlightenment. Tumo is the foundation stone. In other words, we stand on Tumo doing these 2 yogas. And the other 3 are a plan B, auxiliary practices. So through these first 3, we should be able to achieve enlightenment in one lifetime through the 6 yogas of Naropa. Niguma, we have to add dream yoga to it from the other 3 because they separate dream yoga into its own yoga. But So then when we go to sleep at night, a great deal is made about how the dream body is just like a parallel of the bardo body. And so it's said, if you can practice dream yoga, you've got a sort of an advantage in practicing bardo yoga. If you can be conscious in your dreams and know you're dreaming, then when you leave your body at the time of death, you will be conscious that you are dead and are in the bardo. So if we go back to Karma Lingpa and his Bardo Tudal, liberation by enlightenment by herring in the bardo, again and again, it's the injunction is made, like, come into this room and listen to me. Hey, you're dead. You probably don't notice, but you notice you can walk through walls. And if you think about a place, you immediately go there. You're no longer here. And you can read people's thoughts, and it sort of mentions how pointing out that you're dead. So one of the obstacles for a dead person is to know they're dead. And to know so in an enlightening way rather than in a panic-driven way, right? So Karma Lingpa mentions this quite a bit in his Bardo Tudal. So similarly, when we practice illusory body during the day, it's noticing how everything we experience rises and falls on our Mahamudra mind, or if you're Nyingma, then on your Rigpa, your Dzogchen mind. And all those appearances are like a magical thread. They give those 12 famous examples, like an hallucination and an illusion, a mirage, a city of ghosts. In case you've ever been to a city of ghosts. If you have been to a city of ghosts, you'll know why they use that. If you haven't, you'll say, why a city of ghosts? But, and like a dream and so on and so forth, those 12 famous images. But at nighttime, there's practicing illusory dream yoga, the illusory body of dreams. And noticing how when you leave clear light of the moment of sleep, before sleep, and the body sort of flips from being in this body and in this world to being in a dream body and in a dream world. Suddenly the whole supporting and supported mandalas have changed. When I'm in this body is part of my supporting mandala. The ground on which I sit or stand is part of my supporting mandala. The walls are part of my supporting mandala. And my sense of me is my supported mandala. And any other beings that seem to me to be animate beings are my supported mandala buddies, you could say. Now in a dream, that's a whole different supporting mandala, isn't it? The stream energies, the subtle body is supporting, is creating that supporting mandala world wherever you are. If it's a beautiful place or an unpleasant place, or if it's a wonderful dream. I don't know if you're Bill Murray fans, like in Groundhog Day, when he has the same day over and over and over, it's never that great. He says, I had one day when I was in I can't remember where, Bahamas or something, and something very wonderful. Why can't I have that day over and over? And today is like not that a good day to have over and over. So our supporting and supported mandalas are completely changed, aren't they? And so the parallel is made of how the dream body is just like the bardo body, and the dream world is just like the bardo world. So if you want to know bardo well, you have to know dream yoga well, or be able to stay conscious in dreams and be able to explore and understand the nature of subtle energy, and where the manner in which one's own subtle energies generate a subtle world around oneself, a sense of one's own body and a sense of the physicality of the environment in which one is finding oneself. Therefore, Karma Lingpa, throughout Tibetan Book of the Dead, keeps saying, recognize these as projections of your own mind. In other words, the subtle energy supporting eye conscious creates a visual of world, and the subtle energy supporting ear consciousness create a dream world with sound where you can hear like thunder and so on and so forth. And if one does this well, then practicing illusory body during the day and illusory body at the night gives you the guidelines to the interdependence of all things and the relationship between mind and matter, or between self and other, and transforms into conventional bodhicitta. And on the same way, noticing the radiance of mind, or the ultimate nature of your own mind, the rigpa, to use a Nyingma term, of your own mind, transforms into wisdom penetrating to the ultimate nature of all things, or the emptiness nature of all things. And this, of course, in Sutra, we call the 2 levels of reality, 2 levels of truth. In Tantra, we don't use those terms. The highest Yoga Tantra, we just say illusory physicality in clear like mind. Doing that, the one tasteness of experiencer and experience comes into play, and we achieve Dharmakaya. And to quote a Sangha, then our Dharmakaya is like the ocean. But then the heat of our compassion causes some moisture from the ocean to be absorbed and become clouds, which become like your Sambhogakaya. They can directly benefit Aryas, higher beings, but cannot benefit ordinary beings in the hell realms and ghost realms and all animals and so on. And therefore, they release a gentle rain, which falls on the good, the bad, and the ugly equally, bringing benefits to all living beings. So this idea, and in a Buddhist end-of-life care, really comes down to 2 situations, doesn't it? How tantrically mature is the person who you are assisting? So say, for instance, as one of your buddies or pals, your Vajra twins with whom you've been practicing, you received same initiation from same Lama, been practicing together for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and that person, came down with some illness, or, was a married man having a love affair with some lady and got shot by his wife. I don't know. any of the various circumstances to which leads to demise of an individual, of a friend, or of a practice partner. So how you would deal with that person is very individual, based on your own karmic connection with that person. So for instance, when I was in Dharamsala, we had one very dear friend, and we all had initiation from the same Lama, Chakrasamvara. And then he suddenly got liver failure and died in a matter of a few days. And one of the reasons he died probably was that when your liver is very poisoned, you suffer a lot of hallucinations and you become delusional and very wild. And so when we took him to the local hospital, he was very wild and he punched the doctor. So the doctor gave him a little bit of a sedative, and then 5 minutes later, he woke up and punched the doctor again. And so the doctor gave him more of a sedative. And very possibly he died from liver failure, but very possibly because his liver wasn't processing toxins, died from an overdose of whatever that sedative was. And we went to the Lama and discussed it with him. What should we do? Because in India, you're not allowed to cremate someone. His body has to be put in a truck and shipped down to Delhi and all that sort of thing. Because the British India era, in case anyone's, servants got mad at them and poisoned them, or whatever kind of situation, their body had to go. But anyway, we went to his wife and said, what would you like to do? Do you want that to happen? She said, well, let's ask that Lama. And he said, well, the best would be to cremate him here. And 8 of you had been at that empowerment. And so if the 8 of you cremate him, that would be the best. And we mentioned it's not totally legal. And he said, well, anyway, it'll probably work out. Just do it kind of carefully. So we sneaked into the hospital at 3 a.m, took out the body in the dark, and we had the cremator ready with all the wood. So we arrived at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, and he set it up, and the whole cremation was over by about 8 or 9 o'clock. Well, it was down to like this much in the middle, like a chunk of the trunk, you could say, a chunky trunk. And the police showed up and made a little bit of a fuss about it, but then we had his wife phone the embassy and get permission and all of that. But doing for him, I had a very good feeling about that, and much better than having him put on a truck and shipped to Delhi and sit around in a freezer in Delhi and then shipped back to England and put in a place for cremation and all of that. So what one does comes to one's karmic connection, I think, with that person. Now, if it's just, a casual friend who passes away and you're asked to come and help, I think becomes a very different kettle of fish. If it's someone with whom you've done a lot of practice. So what we did when this fellow was being cremated is, rather than reading, like in Tibetan Book of the Dead, only if you were practicing the 100 peaceful, wrathful deities would you read the Tibetan Book of the Dead beside someone. Otherwise, the most common is to do either the sadhana practice they had most commonly done themselves, or if they had done the lay room and quite often done the dangjug, the self-initiation practice. You, with as many of the Vajra siblings or Vajra twins, if there were, Vajra siblings, if there were. In our case, there were 8 Vajra twins and a few Vajra siblings. And so we did the self-initiation while the cremation was happening and sort of visualized him as participating in it. Otherwise, if one is helping just someone who is you could say, a Buddhist with whom you have some connection, then I think whatever was their dharma practice, to encourage them to keep that kind of practice in their mind throughout the stages of death as much as possible. Here in the West, we have a lot of questions about helping those in pain at the time of death. There is no direct Buddhist guideline on that. I mean, in the 6 yogas of Naropa, it said you shouldn't use POA to shorten your life, even if your life is painful. Because although we think of pain as unpleasant, it is really merely a sensation. Pleasure is a sensation. I used to live on Upper Side, West Side in New York, where a couple of years was based there. And about 10 streets down on the Upper West Side were those sort of black leather with whips clubs. And when you drove along the street, you'd see like those people with their whips and their leathers out, because you weren't allowed to smoke in the club, so they'd have to go out for cigarettes. And these people would like go inside and whip one another and enjoy it. And then they'd come out and have a cigarette for a while and talk about what fun it was to whip one another. And then they go back inside. So in that way, pleasure and pain are just a sensation that something is happening. They're a signal, like a telephone noise that something is happening. Like your body or something in your life is calling you like, hey, this needs attention. The kind of attention you give to it will really very much impact the way you experience it. So in my book, I mentioned one of my lamas died while giving a teaching to me and at my request. And when I said and he went and when the translator was translating, he would like look very much in pain. And when the translator finished and he was talking, he'd relax and just talk. And I asked him if we should stop and if it was painful. And he said, yeah, it's a heart attack and it is very painful. And should we stop? Well, it's up to you. The teaching is for you. We could finish it now or finish later. It was very, very relaxed. And then this went on for about 20 minutes. And I said, well, I think I can't take it anymore. It's like my nerves have their limits. I think we should stop now and finish later. He said, you sure? No, I think so, yeah. So he went into his, he told everyone to leave, and he asked me to take his arm and help him off his teaching throne and go to his bed. And he sat up in meditation and sat in meditation for about 6 or 8 hours and then passed away. But looking completely relaxed and completely happy, like it was the painful sensation was just like the sound of thunder in the distance or something like that. And of course, here in the West, we have a lot of schools of Buddhist meditation for pain management. I have a very dear friend up in Vermont, Polish lady who specializes in that, teaching a kind of a Vipassana, Thai forest style Vipassana, coming from Buddha Das, that very, very great Thai master, who's, I think, big inspiration to Jack Kornfeld and Larry Rosenthal and that whole Sharon Walsberg, is that her name? And so pain is a sensation, and if we're completely secular, it's very unpleasant. And secular means we've never really looked closely at the sense of I and how the I binds to this or that experience. If we don't think of the I as being that pain, but rather as just being a distant thunder rolling through the skies, then it's not painful in that same intimate way. It's just a sensation. So in my, Milarepa, when he was dying, and again, Buddhists like to add a little salt to every story. So in his biography, he's poisoned by a monk who's kind of jealous of him for his outrageous behavior. And also, he was a bit of a big mouth. There's no question about it. He was like, he was a little bit outrageous in some of his speech. Let's put it that way. So he irritated this Geshe. And then Geshe in those days just meant a monk who's well trained. So we don't know what school he was or anything like that. But anyway, the guy poisoned him, and then Milarepa didn't die. So he goes up to see him, and because he figures this is weird that he's not dead. And like a criminal likes to return to the place of the crime, visits and says, how are you doing? Great. You're not feeling any discomfort? Well, yes, actually, I'm feeling great pain. How good? And he doesn't look at all disturbed, and says to him, well, how great is the pain? And Milarepa says, well, if I project it on you, you die of a heart attack. So I won't do that. I'll project it into the door. And the door rattled so hard it fell off its hinges. Is that adding a touch of salt to the story? I'm not sure, but that's how the Tibetans tell the story. But anyway, the idea with ourself is to explore the nature of the self and the sensation. Who am I? Where in that sensation is the I? What is there in that I, in that sensation, that represents me? So the traditional way of looking at how the Buddhist anatma. So in the forest tradition of Vipassana, just a sensation, whatever arises, we just watch thoughts, just a thought, feelings, just a feeling, a klesha, just a klesha, just an emotion like that. So for ourselves, like that. But for others, it's up to the individual, isn't it? Like I had one student in Boston from a very wealthy family. And because she'd never really had much experience with meditation. And so she really didn't want to die in a state of unclarity And in the hospital, they can't have you just lying there screaming from pain. So they put you in with morphine. And so she basically had a choice of dying in a drug stupor and dying in a state of clear mind by cutting her water. And just basically, they gave her a month to live, just painfully. And if she cut her water, then about 10 days to live. And she wrote me. I was in Nepal at the time, and she had been my student for about 5 years. But we couldn't say an advanced tantric practitioner. She was a very kind of casual practitioner, you could say. And so I told her, such decisions are not up to anyone except the person doing them. So you should do whatever. The only thing is, I'm going to be in Boston in about 10 or 12 days. I was presently in Nepal. And so you have to stay alive at least until I'm 1 or 2 days after I come and say hello, goodbye. And so she waited until a week before I was going to arrive and started her water fast. And the hospice agreed to it and all that. And just to test her, I took her some chocolates. Ha, 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 ha. But she wanted to die consciously, not to die in a doped stupor. And I told her it's her choice. And it's that way, I think, with each individual. But from Buddhist side, if we can die, if we can bear pain, if our death is a little bit painful, and if we have trained well in meditation and in particular in the non-self, in how the self is not any particular experience. Experiences are like mirages, dreams, illusions, and so on. Any particular experience is just a theater arising in our mind. How we identify with it is what makes it us, as opposed to not us. So most of the Tibetan texts say not to practice poa. Use poa as a way of getting out of a difficult situation. But occasionally we see this not done by great beings, like, for instance, the 13th Dalai Lama, when he passed away in 1933. He had given the Tibetans a map for how to prevent Tibet from being invaded by China. And he said, the communists will invade us and destroy us, and we'll be scattered like ants around the planet. So we don't do this and that and the other. So if you do this, that, and the other, I could live longer. But if you don't, I'm not sure. So they chose not to do it because it would mean raising taxes and doing things that took a lot of political will. So it said at age 58, the 13th Dalai Lama sat in meditation, did poa, projected himself out of his body, and took rebirth so that there would be a young spring flower of a Dalai Lama at the time of the Chinese invasion of Tibet to help Tibet out of the situation they were in and to preserve their culture. And also because it was part of the new 500-year period of Dharma. In other words, Buddhism should last 5,000 years. Every 500 years takes on a different texture. And so to preserve Tibetan culture and spirituality and tantric tradition, and to bring the world into the 6 500-year cycle successfully, he broke the usual Buddhist thing of not using poa to shorten your life, just as a natural at the time of dying. So he did that, and then he came out of that. So then this Dalai Lama appeared in a year later was born, and then went on to finish his training and became perhaps the greatest of any of the Dalai Lamas. And then in 1956, at the end of the 5th 500-year cycle, was in Bodh Gaya with heads of Buddhism from all over the world. And in 1963, he gave a Dharma talk in which he quoted the Buddha from Langavatara Sutra saying, 2,500 years after my passing, my Dharma will go to the land of the red-faced people. And he pointed out that red-faced people referred to Western people, because we white people turn red-faced when we go at altitudes or when we get angry or when we drink alcohol. And he said to them, you all should learn English because our Dharma is going to become very important over the next 500-year period. And I came across that text when I was in Dharamsala and happened to translate it. And then when I was in Madrid in 1991, a Lama who had been at that 1963 talk to the Dalai Lama, to all the gathered Lamas of all the schools. And he says, yeah, we all laughed a little bit when he said that because we didn't see how our Dharma could be so useful for the modern world where, they fly in airplanes and they're too lazy to walk upstairs. They take elevators and escalators and so on. So now I find myself in Spain, unable to speak Spanish or English or any other foreign language. Like many Lamas, many of my friends are all over the world teaching Dharma, but they have to take along a translator because we didn't follow the Dalai Lama's advice and learn a foreign language. Anyway, in terms of our own training, if we can train in generation completion stage yoga, and especially in dream yoga, that's very important. And if we can train in the POA methods, both for using for our own self and also for assisting others, that's very, very useful. Otherwise, in the Buddhist world, there's a certain kind of practices which are called bardo changchok, rituals or prayers to be read or used to assist people who are already passed. And then there's another one called depa chezen, caring for those who are about to depart or have just departed. Chezen means how to take care of or how to help them. And in one of those, which was written by a great Tibetan Lama by the name of Mahasukha, he starts by saying, advanced practitioners do not need help at the time of death, although sometimes it's good if their students attend and pray for their quick return, or request them to make quick return. And so there's a lot of those kind of prayers written in Tibetan by various lamas, the heads of the high lamas of all schools. Probably the present Dalai Lama has written a couple of hundred. It's called, one title is called Tenshuk, Please Live Long. And so many students will go to the Dalai Lama or the Lama who's big in their school and say, would you write this Lama of mine lives risky. He has a motorcycle and he likes to go parachuting. Well, not necessarily those things, but anyway, we want him to live a long time because he's doing a great job. And usually for risky things with Tibetans, it's still like they eat too much meat and drink too much Tibetan butter tea. But please write a Tenshuk to encourage him to live a long time, to keep turning the wheel of Dharma. And once they pass, they go to him, and it's the write a kind of a text called a Nyurjung. Come back quickly, please. But for others, we use a kind of a text either called a Chezen, assisting those who are just about to leave or have left, and Bardo Changchok, helping those achieve enlightenment, or Jang literally means Jang. Enlightenment has two parts to it, Jang Chub. Jang means purification or freedom, and Chub means kind of expansion or blossoming. So it could mean helping those to achieve freedom in the Bardo and achieve enlightenment in the Bardo. So yes, so often these ones, both of those end with a kind of a poa toward the end. And the most common kind of general poa that all Tibetans like is the Amitabha poa. because Amitabha is like infinite radiance and associated with the clear light and associated with Shenrezi and Tara, the lotus family category of Kriya Tantra deities like Avalokiteshvara, Kuan Yin, and Tara, and so forth. Otherwise, some like the Maitreya, those who are especially strong in the 5,000-year prophecy of dharma lasting for 5,000 years, they like the Maitreya Poa a little bit more than the other ones. Otherwise, Chakra Samvara types and whatnot, they like the Dakini Poa, the Poa of the unfailing Dakini, going to Akanista, which is a kind of a almost enlightenment land where you can practice and complete your enlightenment without all the hurricanes and forest fires and tornadoes and what do you call tidal waves and earthquakes and all that sort of stuff. Our little blue planet is generally quite good, but we have the spider and the fly syndrome everywhere, and Darwinian inaction, survival of the fittest, and may the best man or woman win, and the unfittest bite the dust, the Darwinian law. So Akanista and Tushita and Kandan aren't thought to be quite so cutthroat Darwinian as our own little blue planet. So anyway, I'd like to thank the organizers so much for inviting me to say a few words. And for me, I've had the great honor and pleasure of being involved in a lot of the death, dying Buddhist side of things for quite a few years after my book first came out, and it was first published by Penguin Arcana in London. I was asked to be on the Natural Death Institute advisory board in England, where they were trying to take death back from the undertakers and the burial crew. So you could basically bury your Aunt Martha under a tree in the public park. You just had to register it and get permission beforehand. So if she's discovered 30 years from now, the police don't spend, $500,000 trying to figure out how she got there, and various other aspects of natural dying. And Steve Levine and Ram Dass invited me to be part of their program about, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago or something like that. So I've had the great good fortune to be able to participate somewhat in the discussion of sensible dying and sensible after death care, both on the physical and on the spiritual side. With that, I'll stop and ask Julie to select one of the questions to begin with.
How do we help if the dying person has a lot of guilt about the past, Buddhist or not?
Yeah, I mean, one wonderful practice in the Tibetan Buddhist world is a evening practice before you go to sleep of Vajrasattva. You look back over your day and you try to figure where I lived up to my personal best and where I think I failed my personal best, and become aware of it. The only way you can improve is becoming aware of your failings. Therefore, the Kadampa said, if you see the early 11th, 12th century masters of the Kadampa school, if you see a fault in yourself, dance for joy like you just found a great treasure. Because noticing that you have a fault or a failing is the first step in healing. And, if someone is dying and they feel a lot of guilt, I suppose all you can try, obviously it's best if they did some kind of practice like Vajrasattva, even if you do it in a very simple way, just a Om Vajrasattva Hum rather than the 100-syllable mantra. If they did that for many years before passing, they would come to terms with these things long before dying. And it's often said we should meditate on death 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and early evening. And if we do, that'll keep us more focused on leading a meaningful life. And one of the pitfalls of not doing that is when we die, we will very possibly die with great regret of not having used our life wisely. So curing an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But if someone at the time of death, you can always read them some of the Poa practice, which said even if you committed the 5 heinous crimes of drawing blood from a Buddha, raping and not killing your mom or dad, and if you do this practice of Poa, nonetheless, you will go to a... But I think depends on how close that person is to death. If it's a matter of minutes or hours, probably not much can be done. Probably if you are not a great Poa master, good to call a Lama who is a good Poa master. You know, the previous Dudjom Rinpoche, the Dudjom Lingpa, was a chain smoker. And so he had a big, long cigarette holder like this, even though in Nyingmas, they're not very big on smoking. But he did anyway, and he had a big... And so whenever he was asked to do Poa, he'd always take that. And when he's doing Poa, he'd light a cigarette, he'd smoke it. And he'd put the cigarette out right on their Poa aperture. I said if he thought they were especially negative karma people, someone who, bandits and the such. Because often we think of bandits as like not connected to Dharma, but the Dalai Lama's older brother, Takshe Rinpoche, was the abbot of a monastery of Amdo. And his job once a year, was to cycle through the various bandit tribes and see which of them wanted to put children in the monastery for education. Because bandits in Tibet lived as families. They were whole, it was like a little traveling clan of bandits with all the kids. And which one of you want to put? And then he'd be traveling, and they'd give him not only the kid, but with, the offerings for the monastery, either gold, whatever they had robbed some recent, Chinese silk caravan going to Tibet, silks and stuff. And they'd be carrying all of that, going to the next bandit tribe, and nobody would rob them because they're basically going to the bandit tribes, getting kids. So there's nothing wrong with trying to help bandits, brigands, rapists, and murderers. We are all pilgrims on the way to enlightenment. If the person has a week or two or a month or two before they're dead, then they can work on trying to let go of those things. We all have to understand that we all did the best we could at any time with what we had. And sometimes the best we could was not the best that could possibly be done, but it was our personal best. And it really does come down to that. I mean, everyone does what they do because they want happiness, as Dalai Lama puts it. The problem is, a robber thinks that robbing someone will get him or her more happiness. A rapist thinks that raping someone will get them more happiness. And the murderers think that killing someone will get them more happiness. So in the Buddhist world, we don't have this idea of good and evil in an ordinary way, good people and evil people. Just the level of klesha, or the nyumong, the crazy darknesses of the mind, the sort of contorted forms into which humans and other living beings find themselves. So I think, if one is guiding such a person, to just tell them, you did the best you could, and next time around, let's try to do better. And right now, let all of that go. And there's a wonderful practice of offering. I can't remember the text, I was just reading it in the other day, but you offer all the good things I did and all the bad things I did. I offer to my Lama. In other words, if you're a murderer who killed 50 people. So, Buddhists like to quote Angulimala, a student of Buddha who had killed almost 1,000 people and had struggled to achieve enlightenment because of feeling guilt over it. And Buddha told him, as long as you feel guilt, you'll never achieve enlightenment. The first step is transcending that guilt. And, between a pep talk and some yogic instruction just might do the trick. And if not, call in the cavalry, a local Lama who is adept at burning out a cigarette on someone's skull just at the time of their death and forcing their consciousness to leave from that aperture.
Shall I go on?
Sure.
These questions, I have to say, are the answers are very in depth, and we have very little time, so hopefully we can get through them. How do we imagine the white, red, and black visions? Do we see the different colors or the feeling of dissolving specific emotions? Please discuss the same question for visualization of clear light. Thank you.
Okay, so when we do as generation stage practice, we do as a visualization. When we do as completion stage practice, we induce the practice. So as completion stage practice, we can do on 3 occasions: on our meditation cushion with vase breathing and breath retention and fire breathing and fire bellows breathing and so forth, these ways of inducing these transformations. And it's good to get some experience there. We can also generate some experience during lovemaking, and therefore Buddhas are often shown in Yabyum posture, and part of tantric practice is using our sexuality to explore deeper levels of consciousness. That during the sexual act, as we come closer and closer to the orgasmic experience, the drops start moving and the energies start moving, just as at the time of the Chandali or the Tumo, the Kundalini experience, just as at the time of going to sleep, just as at the time of going to die. And for that reason, one study I read on orgasm pointed out that at the moment of sexual orgasm, a person's brain is 99.9% dead. In other words, 99.9% of the brain gets short-circuited at the moment of orgasm. So if we practice karma mudra or sexual lovemaking, and for those of you with partners, of course, that's, you want to make love, I don't know how often, 4 or 5 times a day, I suppose. In Buddhism, you're not supposed to make love more than 5 times a day, please know. We Buddhists are strict on that. But to notice how the energy moves, the energies of your body fluctuate as you come toward the orgasmic moment. And that will help in getting, it's like when you learn to tune a guitar. At first, it's very difficult to actually hear when it's in tune. Once you hear when it's in tune, after that, it becomes easy to tune a guitar. And so starts on your meditation cushion. You can take it a little deeper by karma mudra when you make love, doing so in a yogic or a tantric meditation way, watching the energies and the movement of the white and red drops. And then it happens naturally at the time of going to sleep. So going to sleep consciously, trying to notice how these 4 coarse and 4 subtle inner transformations occur very naturally as you go to sleep. So on your meditation cushion, they are induced yogically. In sexual activity, they happen naturally. And at the time of sleep. Now, the one in sexual activity is considered to be quite important for people who haven't had strong karmic experience in previous lives. Because to get clarity at the time of going to sleep is a little bit difficult, because a lot of people, by the time they get to those subtle stages, they're not used to being self-aware in such subtle states of consciousness. So they kind of, can I use the word veg out? And so they aren't aware of what's happening. But those are the 3 occasions when we're awake: on our meditation cushion doing vase breathing and tumo practice, when making love, and at the time of going to sleep, are the 3 occasions that are most easily utilizable for becoming aware of the 4 coarse and 4 subtle energy transformations leading to clear light mind.
Western medicine identifies death as occurring when the breath stops. Please explain the inner breath and how to identify when it is last taken. Isn't this when it's the appropriate time to perform POA?
Well, if one performs POA oneself or one performs it for others, it's a different kettle of fish, right? Obviously, if one is an accomplished practitioner, one will do it oneself and there's no need for anyone else to help. And one will either do that or will do the bardo practice on purpose so as to decide, should I be a universal emperor or just a great tantric master in my next life? And if one's doing for others, I suppose it depends on their state of mind. Now, in Tibet, with people doing clear light mind meditation at the time of death and doing tukdam, they didn't have very high technology. So they would put a smudge of butter, clear white butter, on the person's breastbone right in front of the heart. And as long as it stayed greasy, then the warmth, even though the heart isn't beating or the breath isn't, the lungs aren't moving, the presence of consciousness in the heart chakra would keep that little clarified butter, ghee, you could say, looking sort of greasy. And then usually one of their main disciples will watch over the Lama when they're in tukdam. And so that's a different kettle of fish. Usually what happens when the consciousness leaves, if they're sitting in a particular position or if they're lying in the lion posture of Buddha, the way he died at his time of death, usually one of those two postures is chosen. Usually the body won't move at all. And at the time of death, just the head will move a little bit like this. And it often said, a red drop comes out of one of the nostrils and a white drop out of the sexual organ. So the attendant keeps a close eye on the Lama doing tukdam. And if either head or if there's any movement like that, then they quickly run up and look under the nostril and look at the sexual organ. Mm. And so that's an indication that it's left. But, you know, if you're doing POA for a friend who wasn't that great a tantric practitioner, so they're not going to be able to do tukdam, then doing it while they're going through that death process is important. In other words, after the 4 coarse elements have dissolved and before the 4 subtle elements have dissolved is the appropriate time. Once the 4 coarse elements have dissolved, there's no reactivating them, you could say. And so the person is still in that body. And once they get into the subtle, they get the clear light, then they go directly into bardo once they leave clear light mind. If they're just in it for a millisecond, that doesn't really work, does it? Mm. So it's often said like that. So otherwise, a Lama will often, in some of the practices of POA, come after the person has died. And you do a practice in which you call the consciousness back to the body. And you do this wrathful mantra and you say, wherever you are wandering in the 6 realms, come here now, back to this room, and look down at your body. And they'll either call it into the body or they'll make a little effigy. In the old days, they used to do it drawing on paper, using mantras and whatnot. That's called a yantra, sort of like the physical exercises you do in Tantra are called yantras. So a trill core, like a mystical wheel. And so then that is put on top of their chest bone as they lie there and they're called into it and the POA is done from there. But otherwise, for ourselves, we should do it. Wait until the whole thing's happening. If you've been aware enough of that process during your tantric yoga, then you'll be aware at the time of sleep, then you'll be aware at the time of death. If you're not aware at the time of sleep, means you're not fully aware on your tantric cushion, on your meditation cushion. In which case, you can just read the Poa prayer and hope for the best. And, phone the person's root Lama if possible and ask them to have some of the Lamas or whatever meditators in his monastery or nunnery or whatever it is to do some kind of helping in the bardo. And usually that means calling them from afar into some sort of yantra device and doing the Poa from within the bardo.